After 16 long years, WWE is bringing back the iconic Saturday night's main event. It's hard to explain, especially to younger fans, just how special and important Saturday night's main event is to WWE's history and the crazy story behind how it all came together. It may not have been relevant for more than a specific period within the mid to late 1980s, but the fact is it is still one of the most nostalgic and epic programs in WWE's vast catalog of content. So for younger fans, why is this free television event such a big deal in the history of the company? Or not just WWE, but pro wrestling in general. Why did this series help WWE break through in a way that no other wrestling promotion has before? Why is Saturday night's main event probably just as important to the breakout history of WWE as WrestleMania? Let's dig into it and let's find out why. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin Kellum. Sound off in the comments below and slam the like button. WWE is set to air 5 different editions of Saturday night's main event in the foreseeable future, with the first starting on December 14th, 2024, and another scheduled for the first quarter of 2025. It's the perfect time to bring back a live TV event outside of Raw and SmackDown that feels almost like a premium live event that you would see streaming on Peacock, and this will stream on Peacock. In no other era would it work like it will now. So why is WWE bringing back Saturday night's main event, and what is the incredible history behind it? Why is it so important? Prove it to me, Sportskeeda guy. It was in 1984, and it starts with 2 very important characters as they cross paths at critical times in their careers. First, of course, is WWE head honcho, the man who took pro wrestling mainstream, Vince McMahon. The other figure who really helped him do this in a way that maybe is underrated in the greater conversation, a guy named Dick Ebersol. Ebersol rose the ranks in NBC Network in his 20s, securing a role as executive producer of the now iconic Saturday Night Live comedy institution during a challenging time in the late 70s and early 80s. Ebersol saw potential in pro wrestling, which was just taking off with Hulkamania in its golden era and big sold-out crowds in arenas, and WWE being a hit on syndicated television. Not so much network TV yet, and there's a big difference between them in terms of sizable reach and audience. It was 2 particular TV specials that aired on cable television on MTV that drew Ebersol's notice. The Brawl to End It All, which featured Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper, and The War to Settle the Score. The Brawl to End It All saw WWE secure the iconic Cyndi Lauper, a breakout pop singer, as a ringside supporter of Wendy Richter and Hulk Hogan, WWE title champion, defending against Greg the Hammer Valentine, and it earned a 9.0 Nielsen average television rating, making it the most viewed program in the young history of MTV at the time. Yeah, you want your MTV, and wrestling fans will watch it. The fact that the follow-up event, War to Settle the Score, beat the television audience of the Brawl to End It All was proof that pro wrestling, and specifically WWE's brand of it, was on fire in the early 1980s. The War to Settle the Score in particular was important because it was basically a go-home show for the first WrestleMania. And considering how successful WrestleMania was, you could see that the momentum, the mania, was truly on WWE's side. And maybe, just maybe, it was worth experimenting with it as a network TV product. Hulk Hogan beat Roddy Piper by disqualification at the Brawl to End It All, and that hyped up WrestleMania 1, a clash where Hogan teamed with mega popular celebrity at the time, Mr. T, a network TV star, to face Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff in the historic main event. Dick Ebersol was watching and had a vision of a program that could be the primetime version of this in the Saturday night slot when Saturday Night Live wasn't airing a fresh episode. We speak a lot about WWE's high production values and the steps Vince McMahon took to get WWE viewed by a global audience and seen as more than just wrestling. But it may not have happened if it wasn't for his encounter with Dick Ebersol. Ebersol was straight to the point in his interaction with McMahon about how different he wanted this possible presentation of a wrestling program to be. From his point of view, he only had one chance to prove to the higher-ups at NBC that wrestling was worth giving a shot on a coast-to-coast broadcast platform. Seeing the production quality of WrestleMania 1, Ebersol used his influence to implement a variety of changes to the presentation of WWE's TV programming for what would become Saturday night's main event. The lights were brighter. There was a boom mic to capture the sounds in the ring, and it had taken a whole life of its own. Imagine HD before HD. And you'd have to think that McMahon, who had no idea he could get this type of presentation on television, was probably thrilled with Ebersol's production muscle and mind because it perfectly aligned with his vision for sports entertainment. He wanted the WWE to be as mainstream as possible, and the marriage of a top TV network with a rapidly rising wrestling company gave the birth of what we now know as Saturday night's main event. Hulk Hogan was the guy in WWE at the time, and he was in the thick of his run as WWE champion. And he was nearly as popular as any superhero in a comic book for children coast to coast. This gave fans the opportunity to see the Hulkster wrestle on television in a way they have never seen before, something that rarely ever happened actually on television. Apart from just Hogan, it wasn't just often fans getting to see superstars wrestle each other on television. Those were usually reserved for big pay-per-views and live events. And there weren't as many of them in the 80s as you may think. When Saturday Night's Main Event first aired, we were still a few years removed from the 3 Big 4 pay-per-view events as tentpoles. So this Saturday Night's Main Event felt as big as WrestleMania and probably introduced pro wrestling to more fans than WrestleMania, considering it was on free over-the-air television and was accessible not just on this station or that station. No, it's NBC. You can find that on your TV dial pretty easily. For example, the Royal Rumble and SummerSlam only began in 1988. The Survivor Series was 1 year prior in 1987. In the context of modern day, it's exactly how you hear reports of WWE wanting to stack up Raw as much as possible for the early launch of the Netflix deal in 2025. Netflix is a global platform that will truly introduce WWE to many fans who either didn't watch for a while or have never watched before. It will literally create an entire new generation of pro wrestling fans. And guess what created an entire generation of pro wrestling fans? Primed right off WrestleMania. NBC and WWE coming together. It may not have gotten $500 million per year, but that's not the point. The momentum was there. The money, even adjusted for inflation, is incomparable to what we see today. But the fact that as many wrestlers were on the show got double pay for a Saturday Night's Main Event, one payment from WWE and one payment from NBC, it was significant for the boys in the back. And with all the big stakes here, the boys in the back, though, had a challenge for themselves. King Kong Bundy, one of Hogan's foes on Saturday Night's Main Event, revealed on kayfabe commentary that it was a little bit of a constrained system in terms of time limits when performing on the big network TV specials. It really dipped more into the entertainment part of sports entertainment. It felt like uncharted territory for pro wrestling. Rather than just focusing on the core product of wrestling in the ring, there was a lot of promos, interview segments, music videos, and just goofy, ridiculous stuff to show off the circus of WWE as a product at the time. The fact is, Saturday Night's Main Event wasn't meant for a hardcore, dedicated wrestling audience that was already there. It was meant for a mainstream audience, a sampling of what fans could get on the live events and big pay-per-views to come. That's exactly how they structured it. It was a big show built around Hulk Hogan as the main event of Main Event. This was for 2 reasons. For one, the show went on air until midnight on Saturday nights, so people staying up until the end were usually really hardcore fans who you knew were going to watch the whole thing. While Hogan got an earlier slot, the main event was the opening match, usually of Saturday Night's Main Event, because people really loved the Hulkster. He was the one who brought in the kids. The first ever episode of Saturday Night's Main Event aired on May 10th, 1985 from the Nassau Coliseum, which happens to be the venue of its return edition in 2024. It served as a post-WrestleMania 1 episode, which is why it saw a fallout between Roddy Piper, Bob Orton, and Paul Orndorff. It wasn't wonderful. When Orndorff and Piper had a falling out, Mr. Wonderful instantly became a good guy, a babyface, with Mr. T getting one of the biggest pops of the night when he came out to save the day. The episode had 4 matches, and the final match was pretty random when you actually think about it. The first ever match on Saturday Night's Main Event saw the U.S. Express and Ricky Steamboat face the villainous trio of Nikolai Volkov, George the Animal Steel, and the Iron Sheik. Yes, for younger fans, the U.S. Express was Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham, the father and uncle of Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas. Hulk Hogan took the second match of the night against Bob Orton, who he denounced along with Rowdy Piper. He beat Orton by DQ, which set up Paul Orndorff saving and cementing himself as a good guy. Wendy Richter had Cyndi Lauper by her side as she defeated the Fabulous Moolah. Lauper had a running relationship with WWE, and they mutually benefited from it. WWE got to have a mainstream name in Cyndi Lauper on their show, while she got to use it as a platform to promote her music. In this case, it was the song Goonies Are Good Enough from the movie The Goonies, a great movie, and a music video aired during the show before her appearance. Wow, what a tie-in. The music video featured a lot of WWF wrestlers along with the cast of The Goonies. It set up hilarious backstage promos where Roddy Piper and Cyndi Lauper got into a verbal argument. The final match of the night, Junkyard Dog versus Pete Doherty. Yeah, pretty random when you look back at it. It was meant to be a tribute to all the mothers of the world on Mother's Day. Aww. Hulk Hogan dedicated his match to his mother. JYD got his mom by his side to get the main event win over Doherty. And there was even a post-match segment with Cyndi Lauper's Mother's Day party. It featured a lot of superstars with their mothers and led to a silly brawl between Cyndi Lauper and Fabulous Moolah, which somehow ended with Mean Gene Okerlund having cake all over his face while Moolah fell disgracefully. Wow, what a scene! This really highlighted WWE's desire to produce entertainment outside of just the ring product we saw, pushing the company as sort of a one-stop shop for all things, a goofy sideshow circus with pro wrestling in the middle of it. Saturday Night's Main Event went on top to achieve a lot for both WWE and the NBC network. NBC was consistently getting some of the highest ratings in that time slot, peaking at an 11.6 Nielsen rating. And yeah, it's a record that stands to this date. And you might be wondering what on earth drew tens of millions of people as Saturday Night's Main Event continued to be such a big thing in its second year as a TV special on NBC. It was a 20-man over-the-top battle royal. You heard that right. The reason why it was such a big deal is it was because it featured both Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan in the lead-up to their big match just 2 weeks later, a legendary stadium sellout clash at WrestleMania 3. Yes, Hulk Hogan may have been front and center of it all, but there were a lot of other factors playing into the success of Saturday Night's Main Event. There was an incredible cast of characters in what many call WWE's big cartoon era, and a great interblending of celebrities and different tie-ins to bring people to make these shows feel like more than just another show. From the colorful Macho Man Randy Savage and eventually Ultimate Warrior to the trash-talking Roddy Piper, so many others, it was a show that created many wrestling fans' idea of what pro wrestling was. We really can't do justice in just one video about how many big superstars had their early starts in career-defining moments and really things that broke them out to a new level on Saturday Night's Main Event. It was a stage where young guys like a Bret the Hitman Hart got an opportunity against Randy Savage. It was a place where The Undertaker became a good guy even though he was really, really scary for the first time by saving Miss Elizabeth from Jake the Snake Roberts. All of that is only scratching the surface. Even Jesse the Body Ventura was a perfect host for the show for 5 years, whether he had Vince McMahon or Bobby the Brain Heenan as his partner. Not to mention the incredible music with Obsession by Animotion and the more synth-heavy Saturday Night's Main Event theme song by Douglas Grama between 1988 and 1992. It had a touch, it had a feel, it felt like its own thing. For 3 years, the show heavily revolved around the Hulkster, who wrestled in every single one of them except the 11th edition. On that occasion, he wrestled in a dark match, but still appeared on the broadcast with a pre-taped interview. In the 16th edition, a post-WrestleMania 4 one, Hulk Hogan didn't appear on Saturday Night's Main Event for the first time. In that case, Macho Man Randy Savage, who was then the recently crowned WWF champion, defended the title against One Man Gang. There was just so many high stakes and important matches that made the show a must-watch. The success of it even led to WWE creating a Friday night show before SmackDown. It was a spin-off of Saturday Night's Main Event, simply dubbed The Main Event. In the first edition of The Main Event, Hogan and Andre the Giant had their long-awaited rematch for the WWF Championship. Following the massive success of WrestleMania 3, this was a match that drew one of the biggest television audiences for pro wrestling of all time, with a whopping 33 million viewers. It's insane to think that that was possible, but 33 million people saw Hulk Hogan's historic reign as WWE champion, which at that point was 4 years deep, come to an abrupt and controversial screw job of an ending. It was the first and only time Andre the Giant ever won the WWF or WWE Championship, and controversially, note that part, forfeited it to the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, who bought the title from him before it was declared vacant. That was what led to Macho Man Randy Savage eventually becoming the WWE champion and the formation of the Mega Powers. A lot of that storyline was captured on Saturday Night's Main Event. The Mega Powers even had an awesome match against the Twin Towers of Akeem and Big Boss Man on Friday Night's Main Event. If you have the WWE Network while it's still around, or Peacock, it's really worth checking out the entire storyline. We urge you. It is something special, especially for you younger fans who've only heard of it. Watch the whole thing. See how the sauce is made. While there were only 5 episodes of the Friday Night Main Event show between 1988 and 1991, Saturday Night's Main Event enjoyed a 31-episode run until its end in 1992. By that time, it was early 91. NBC seemed to be falling out of their love with pro wrestling, and the softening of the ratings didn't really help either. Dick Ebersol, the main man who helped it get on the air other than Vince McMahon, didn't hold the same power that he did in the past in NBC. And maybe he couldn't do enough with those network executives to keep the show in the schedule. The last 2 editions in the 90s were aired on the then still very new Fox TV network, which became its temporary and final home, at least for a while. They drew a respectable 14.3 million viewers, 10.6 million viewers, but things were on the decline. It reflected a harsh reality of WWE at the time, and it found themselves facing a critical change. Wrestling didn't have the same cool mainstream appeal it once did a few years earlier. In hindsight, it's easy to see how this thing kicked off a 5-year period of WWE trying to figure out where it was after a big boom period. Even names like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Kevin Nash, Razor Ramon, the departures of stars like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage saw the ratings consistently dry up as things, were hard in the 90s. As for Saturday Night's Main Event, it had a revived 5-episode run during the Ruthless Aggression era in the mid-2000s. Still, the original run of Saturday Night's Main Event holds a huge place in WWE's history for how much it helped launch pro wrestling into a new level of mainstream popularity. The fact that they used such an awesome level of music and presentation and intermingling between Hollywood and pro wrestling on another scale that WrestleMania simply couldn't because it was on free television. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it did the job. If you watch it as a modern fan, you may not understand the appeal of it or why it was so huge, but maybe watch it within the lens of where it aired, when it aired, and how it reached the fans at the time. If you just compare the production quality between WrestleMania 1 and the first episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, you will see that 40 days apart, it's night and day. There's a reason why the crowds were so hot, why so many people became wrestling fans because of this show. Many of your favorite wrestlers grew up watching it as well. What it achieved was leaving a cultural impact on mainstream culture. It's hard to comprehend just how many homes it reached at its peak. WWE isn't going to expect the same type of impact by bringing it back 5 times in the next year or two, and WWE has to produce their TV shows in a completely different circumstance with social media, YouTube, all those different things, and an international TV audience as well. But what they will try to do is make it as important as possible, as must-see as possible as it was back in the day, to make it a main event. Expect WWE to use it not as a stage to conclude most storylines, but as a show to further already existing ones, but still give you something special to tune in for. We're also glad to see that they're using the Obsession song in their promotion and a feel back to good times of the past. Yes, fans with their children can enjoy pro wrestling in a new circumstance coming up, and Saturday night will have its main event once again. What's your favorite match that you've been able to look up and stream from the past from Saturday night's main event? Let us know in the comments below.